Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. Got one I haven't had out for a little while. It is this Medico VFQ, Verifying Quality, Foursquare pot. It dates to the what I've been able to find, somewhere between the 1950s and early 1960s. And the Foursquare seemed to be appropriate because I am going to be talking about a friend of mine who used to work for the Square D company. So, let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. So I was just having lunch with one of my dearest friends, very, very good brother in Christ, a fellow named Doug. My wife and I love Doug and his wife, Jan, very much, and very, very dear friends, and Doug and I are just very, very, very close. In fact, there was a time when Doug and I used to get together pretty much every week after school for me in the afternoons for a Diet Coke. At the time, he was a big Diet Coke man, and we'd get together for Diet Coke somewhere and just chat, catch up, just do the sorts of things that good brothers do. So, actually, it was earlier today, he and I were out to lunch. We got talking about our children, and both of his children are grown and out of college, and one of mine is, as you know, and one's still in college. So we're talking about that, and we got talking about our own experiences and how we knew, and when we knew what we were called to do in life. And Doug was telling me the story. He knew he wanted to be an accountant in second grade. Now, I paused him in the story, and I said, I mean this with all due respect. I said, you know that's odd, right? And he laughed, and I said, you hadn't even learned takeaway yet in second grade, right? We're still learning basic math, and you already know you want to be an accountant. And he told this story, and it was a wonderful story about someone that his family knew who was an accountant, and the kind of life that young Doug associated with someone who was an accountant. And he went on to major in that, University of Alabama. He's a big Bama man. So is his wife, Jan. They both went there. Rolled Tide for them. And I got to thinking about my story. And then I told him, I said, listen, I said, this might be an episode coming up on my channel. So after we came home, I got home from lunch, I thought, hey, pop out on the deck, grab the Medico VFQ Foursquare, and we'll talk about this. And Doug did. He worked for many, many years for Square D. Eventually, he became a pastor at a church, an executive pastor sort of person, dealing with the finances and all of the business end of running a large church. And he is retired now. And I was telling him the story. I remember as far back as kindergarten, when one of my grandmothers would come over in the afternoon. My dad was still at work, my mom was home, and her mother would sometimes come over in the afternoon, And I remember giving my grandma spelling tests just so that I could put a big red F at the top, because somehow or another I thought that's what a teacher did. And while it is true that Doug, as he said, through elementary school and so forth, there was a time when he really thought he was going to be a Major League Baseball player. And certainly every time I went to the barber shop, I came home wanting to be a barber. I would go to the doctor. Came home wanting to be a doctor. Yet there was the accounting thing that stayed with Doug, and the teaching thing that obviously stayed with me. And I talked about my call specifically when I was in high school, really felt the divine calling to be a Latin teacher. And I'm not going to go through that story again. So what I'm curious about, and I'm going to ask the question in the middle of the video this time. When did you know what you were called to do? Now, let's be very clear. That may not have been a particular job, okay? Maybe you knew you were called to do something with building. And then along the way, you've worked in construction trades, and you've done various aspects of that. And maybe you moved into management and so forth. Not the particular job, but that you knew you were called to something in building, right? Or you knew you were called to do something in medicine. And maybe initially you thought it was going to be a doctor, and you turned out maybe you were a doctor, but it was with animals. You became a vet, or you became a nurse, or a lab technician, or however that actually played out. And it may have played out in multiple different ways. In Doug's case, he worked, as I said, for the Square D company, and then eventually became a pastor and used those same skills in really what he was wired for, the kind of work that he really deeply enjoyed. He applied that as a pastor at a local church. I asked that. Well, hey, I'm interested. I'm interested in what your stories are. But I think, well, I think two things. I think a lot of things. You certainly don't have to know at an early age what you're called to do, right? And I suspect that many people don't. I suspect that many people go through life, have various adventures and experiences and various jobs and various relationships, and it might not be until middle age or even beyond when they finally say, yes, this is what I was called to do. This is what I was really made to do. There may be people who do know early, and they never really, or let's put it this way, what they're called to do is not what ends up being the source of their income. All right, that's not what their job is. And maybe they indulge in it, maybe they find a way to engage with what they are really called to do separate from their job, in some service capacity, or as a hobby or avocation or whatever. Maybe it does fit with what actually pays the bills. And then there are those people, I think, and there may be more of those than we suspect, who knew at a very, very early age really what they were called to do. And did it. So I'm curious, when did you know? When did you know, and how did you come to know what you were really called to do? And that's not to say that there's only one thing, okay? So for example, I do feel that I'm called to be a teacher. I'm also been called to be a writer. I've been called to be a speaker. you could say the one thing I've been called to is communication. Maybe that's the way to put it. However you want to think about it, really doesn't matter. When and how did you come to that realization of, yes, this is where my deep interests lie. This is where my talents and gifts and passions and desires all lie. Related question, how has that played out for you? Sorry we had a little glitch there in the video, so let me kind of come back to the question where I was. Have you been able to live out that calling in any particular way, whether it's through your job or in addition to, around your job, separate from your job? Were you able to do it while you were working? Is it something you needed to wait to do until you had retired? Or is it something that you've only been able to fulfill while on vacations or time away from your job? So very interested to hear those stories. Can't wait to hear your comments. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.